Welcome, nerds. This is the first webisode ever of the best podcast in history. I am your host, Josh Houslander. My co-host, the gorgeous Tiffany Foresi, to my left, and with us, as always, but refusing to speak, is our producer, Adam Hernandez, the heart and soul of everything here at EmpireMedia.com, despite him saying he's not here. What's up, Tiffany? How you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm awesome. Super excited about this show. First episode. We've had you on a couple weeks ago on the Xcast to kind of promo this whole thing, but this is the first official episode of the best podcast in history, and we're going to kick it off right away. We're going to talk about a lot of royalty stuff on this, because that's one of your specialties.
Yes.
And there's a historical aspect to that, but, I mean, current royalty news isn't really history, but I guess it kind of is, because it will be historical, and I guess even if it just happened yesterday, it's still history, right?
Yes.
I mean, everything's history. If it happened 5 minutes ago, it's still history.
Dude, we're making history.
We are making history right now. Right now. There's no such thing as the present, because even how we started this show is now in the past, and the end of this show is now in the future, but that will soon be in the past, because the present is too finite to identify.
It's just like one big pretzel.
Exactly. Good point. Love that. So, we do got some royal family news right now, though, right? What's going down with the royal family? This is your thing. I know, but the British royal family especially. We had a new brat, right?
Yep.
What's up?
Are you excited about that?
I am, yeah. I like
Yeah, it's
I like kids and I like Brits.
I mean, you got 4 kids, so you understand.
I do.
Wanting to have more kids, right?
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
if I was part of the royal family, I'd have like 100 kids.
Yeah, they would be pretty excited about you. The line of succession is just on point right there.
Right. I mean, because then, you're not a guy like me who's, forced, my wives wouldn't be leaving me all the time because I'm like royal. And I actually would have enough money to afford them all. Yeah. So it'd be crazy.
Dude, you could have a house for each one of them, like a nice little estate.
Right. Palace. You don't even have to really take care of them. Somebody does all the hard work for you.
No, somebody does that for you. They're a household.
Yeah.
Just see them once in a while. It's good.
Sounds awesome. Just go like, it's 2 to 2:45 this afternoon. I'm going to play catch with my son, and then I'm going to go do something else.
Yeah.
But what's the new baby? Let's talk about this new baby.
How do you like his name? Did you know his name yet?
Tell me. Refresh my memory.
It is Louis Arthur Charles.
Louis Arthur
It's pretty significant, right? I feel like I like Louis.
Yeah, but it's a little French though, right?
It does feel French to me.
Aren't they kind of rubbing that in the French royalty's face by
I don't know.
naming their kid Louis?
I don't know. All I can think about is like Louis the 16th and shit like that.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Oh, I love the Louis. I mean, 14, 15, and 16.
I do love 14 too.
Yeah, they're all a lot of fun. Arthur, I mean, that's a classic British name.
Yeah.
You see that all over the place. Isn't there kind of like an Arthur curse though with the British kings that they kept wanting at some point to have an Arthur II, even though Arthur I is kind of just part of legend. They kept wanting to have an Arthur II, and it never came to fruition. I know King Henry II, his older brother, who was supposed to be king, was Arthur.
Yeah, and was King Henry VIII's brother Arthur, or was I crazy?
I
think I want to look that up.
Was he Arthur? Maybe not. It's possible. I know his brother was supposed to be king.
Yeah.
What are we looking at? Was married to Catherine of Aragon.
Yeah. And then Charles, obviously, that is super significant to his dad.
King Henry VIII's older brother.
Is it Arthur? Or, I don't know. I really thought they were going to name their kid Albert for some reason. Oh. What do you think about that?
Well, that would have been kind of cool. I mean, throw some, what's the opposite of throwing shade? Throw some respect at the old man.
Yeah. He'd be like a little baby, but he feels like an old man already, too.
Yeah. They call him Al, though.
Yeah.
That's not so bad.
Yeah, didn't they call, like, Alberts usually birdies or something like that? Like, they'd be like Birdie.
Oh, okay.
Know?
It's Arthur, Prince of Wales.
Okay, good call, Tiffany. Yeah.
See, I always think that I don't know, and then it happens to be right.
Yeah,
I'm like, I don't know.
Damn, son. The legit history. Because you should have a history podcast.
Yep. I think we're making it. It's history right now.
It is. What's up? Are there some new decrees or anything going down with the royal family right now too? Is it true, did they kind of change the former misogynistic rule?
I think so, because I think Princess Charlotte's actually the first one to not get outranked by her brother. So normally, like, back in the day, as we could say, she would be pushed in the line of succession behind Louis. But now she actually stands in her place, so that's the first time in history that's happened.
So what is the succession now? Right now, the list.
What is it? Charles, William, George, Charlotte, and Louis.
Okay.
Then Harry. So, poor Harry, he keeps getting bumped down the line.
Yeah, he'll never be there.
No, never.
Could have been a contender, but
I'd rather be Harry.
Oh hell yeah!
He is like so much. It's like so much easier.
Oh my god! I mean, like his job is he's like destined to be a party boy.
Yeah,
he's getting married too, right?
Yep, May 19th. So
May 19th. Are you gonna stay up all night? And when is it? That'll be like middle of the night for us here.
Yeah, they're 5 hours ahead. Oh gosh.
Cool.
So I'm gonna have to get up like super early or stay up really late for that.
Yeah.
I feel like people throw parties for this though, don't they? You ever hear people doing that? Like when people like get married, they just stay up all night and.
You know, I had mentioned before on our first preview cast that for years my mom had Fergie and Diana's weddings on VHS. And yeah, I think they still have them. I'm not sure, but yeah, it was a big deal. She and actually I do recall one of the last weddings. It might have been Williams. My mom did have a party.
Yeah, my mom.
I showed up before work. It was like it started at like 4 or 5 in the morning.
Yeah, my mom actually stayed up and watched it. Will and Kate's wedding and Princess Diana's wedding. I mean, I was younger then, so we don't really know back then. But my mom actually stood up all night and watched it.
Maybe we should do something.
Yeah, get
together.
Yeah,
hang out,
like sleep
watch
over.
The wedding. Adam, you down?
It's a reason to drink. Isn't that what people do?
Yeah, it's like a mimosa thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, I read today that they did. Pubs are going to be open 2 hours later than they normally are.
Oh, really?
Like, they passed that. So on that day, it's just like a party.
Wow, it's good to be king.
It is.
It truly is.
Like the wine is flowing. Like let's just make fountains like back in the day of Henry VIII, where they just have fountains of wine. That's the kind of party we need to go to.
Yeah, I like that. I know you got another one, a little off topic, but still in the royalty thing. You're big into the Swedish monarchy. Yeah,
the Swedish royal family.
Yeah, and they got some stuff going on right now, don't they?
Well, it's King Carl Gustaf's 72nd birthday, so obviously they did a balcony appearance, which everybody loves those. Sweet. So, and his daughter, Crown Princess Victoria, was there with her kids, and they were pretty cute, not gonna lie.
Crown Princess, what an awesome title.
I know. Can we just be Crown Prince Josh here?
Yeah, I know. Can I just be that, please? For God's sakes, can I just be a crown prince of something, please?
Crown prince.
I love the name Victoria. That's one of my kids' middle names.
Is it? I love that name too.
Yeah. I know. I've a lot of kids, so I got a lot of names that have to go around. But.
Yeah, it gets confusing sometimes.
Yeah. Scarlet Victoria is my youngest.
Ooh,
my youngest
I like
daughter.
that.
Yeah. No, I love that. Queen Victoria is one of my all-time faves.
Is it?
Yeah.
I was just watching a YouTube documentary about her, and it was just so crazy because we always see her as like when she's older, she was just very refined. But then I was watching. They said when she was younger, she was just very like, she loved drinking and she loved like was very promiscuous and all that. And even when she gave birth, they used chloroform and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, like does this happen?
That's awesome.
I love reading about those things about history.
She was the last British monarch to use the veto power, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. And I know there's been talks about maybe doing away with that, but I hope they don't.
No, I hope they don't either.
I like the fact that it's not like the British people are have freedom or anything.
No,
they live in like a totally
controlled society.
Yeah, I mean they're subjects, not citizens. I'm not trying to throw shade at the Brits. I'm just it's the truth.
Yeah, we're the only land of the free.
We really are.
We're the OGs.
Yeah, and we're pushing it by calling ourselves the land of the free at this point.
Yeah.
It's rough.
I seriously can't wait for the day when President Trump would meet like the Queen. Can you imagine how epic that would be?
That's going to happen, right?
Well, he's not. They're not saying if he's going to meet the royal family. Only going there for business, and it's not a state visit.
Oh, okay.
But it's on Friday the 13th, so I don't know. It's kind of creepy.
Cool. That could be cool.
Could work in his favor.
Yeah, they haven't met yet, right? Will he be invited to the royal wedding?
No,
he will
isn't.
not be.
I just wrote an article on that. Nope, he will not. The Obamas will not. So
Dang.
even though they're very good friends with the Obamas, you know.
That's
But you can't throw that kind of shade, you know.
right.
That's the kind of shade that starts wars and stuff like that, or political discord.
Right.
Like
I
that.
mean, and I know Adam, who refuses to speak today. I know that he just likes to smirk at us instead when we say that. But I know that he always thinks that he's against the idea that we would go over there and talk to the royal family. Because like, hey, didn't we fight a war to get away from you people? And I kind of see that to some degree. I don't like the idea of the president going over there and kissing their ass. But I mean, they can still be cool with each other, right? I mean, come on, we're all buds now.
All right, you're forcing me to come in here now.
Okay,
I mean,
go ahead, man.
That's what you're doing.
Speak
you're
your mind, bro.
No, I don't have anything to say about that. I think the reason, and Tiffany, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the reason why, Trump and Obama the reason why they're not invited to this one is I believe it's because Harry isn't in the immediate line of succession. Like we said earlier, he is way down the line in terms of becoming the next king of England. So if this was obviously if George, that's the youngest ones, right? If George was getting married, then the sitting president and possibly other former heads of state would be there. I think that's it. Don't quote me on that, but I think that is the reason why they're not invited.
Yeah, he doesn't have an obligation. He is correct on that. They don't have an obligation to actually invite them, but the huge debate was that Harry is actually good friends with the Obamas.
Mhm.
Like they attended the Invictus games that he created. When they went there for state visits, they actually became friends.
Yeah.
So, but nobody likes Trump apparently over there. So it's just you can't invite a former president and not invite the current president.
Oh,
so
God,
then
that
it
would've
becomes a huge issue.
Can only imagine the tweets from that.
Oh, but it's the same kind of politics that goes on in any family when somebody gets married. You know?
Yeah. All right, I'm gone. See you guys.
Okay, so I guess
Bye.
thank you for that, Adam. By the way, it was good information. But I guess in some ways you could almost say that because it's Harry and he's not going to be the direct heir, that this is almost the equivalent to a royal family small wedding.
Yeah, it really is. Although they've invited the public, though, because it's at Windsor Castle, so there's people in the public that are invited. So they're really trying to actually make it, for the people, but it is small. It's a more intimate wedding. So
let's see, who's he marrying?
Meghan Markle.
Meghan Markle.
Yeah, she's pretty hot.
Is she?
Not gonna lie.
Right on.
He did pretty well for himself.
She's not related to the chick from Germany, is she?
No.
I didn't think so. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited though. May 19th, though. That's pretty soon.
Yeah.
So people are gonna be staying up all night for that one.
Yeah, I'll need to do that. I will need to do that. I wonder what channel it'll be on. It'll be on cable. I don't have cable.
I don't think it would be on cable. I feel like you have to stream it somewhere.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
I mean...
I don't know. I feel like back in the day they were on ABC or something.
Was it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I feel
Even
like that
for
was
Will and Kate, maybe they are. I feel like I just saw clips of it later on or something like that.
Okay.
Maybe.
We'll figure it out. Yeah.
I mean, there's 300 channels on TV. It's got to be on one of them. If you have cable.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Hey, this is the first episode of the show, as we've mentioned about a dozen times already tonight. But we just want to kind of set the stage for it because we're still working with this format. And we're still kicking around the idea of how much time we're going to spend on each segment for this show. But one of the things that Tiffany and I really wanted to discuss and really wanted to throw out there was in a history examined type segment to be able to talk about how history cross-references into other subjects. And some of them are obvious, geography, for sure, is a big one. Politics is for sure a big one. But one we're going to focus on later tonight in our Listery segment is philosophy. But history can also really cross-reference into anthropology, mathematics, spirituality, foreign language. It can really cross-reference into a lot of these things, so we're going to try to talk about a lot of that stuff. And if people ever want to comment on places in social media, maybe we can even do our best to pay attention as to what requests people have that we want to talk about. No promises, but we can do what we can. Now, Tiffany, do you want to jump into our listery segment about tonight's listery segment is our top 3 favorite philosophers in history. Do you want to jump into that now, or is there anything else you want to throw out about the royal family?
No,
about future topics on the greatest podcast in history?
No, I think we should break it down because I feel like this is going to take us a while. I mean, philosophy is the basis for all history.
It really is.
I mean, that's just my personal opinion.
I agree with you, and we talked briefly on the last time we had you on as a guest on the XCast. We talked briefly about the ideas that there are a lot of different types of history. Living history is one that we discussed that isn't really necessarily our cup of tea. I'm glad these people exist. They're great as museum curators, things like that. Your Civil War reenactors and stuff like that. Even though I know the reenactors and the living historians like to differentiate and separate themselves, but it's around the same idea, basically. But I, like Tiffany, am very big into the idea of philosophy. Now, philosophy and history are not the same thing. They are definitely very different topics. And I know quite a few people over the years who have majored in philosophy. And one of the complaints about low-level philosophy courses at the collegiate level are that they aren't actually philosophy. When you go to a college, university, or a community college or whatever, and you take Philosophy 101, really, in a lot of cases, that class should be called the history of philosophy. Would you agree with that, Tiffany? Because they're really not breaking into philosophy or logic or reason or different types of philosophies. They're really not even talking about ideology that much.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really even break into politics or religion that much. They're basically giving you a history of some of the top dudes in philosophy. And I love that as a class, but I'm a history guy. So I do think that's really important. I just kind of agree that those classes, in a lot of cases, should be titled The History of Philosophy. Not that it's a bad way to start. You kind of do need to know that stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for philosophy. So Tiffany and I have prepared a listery, if you will, of 3 philosophers. And we showed our list, not to each other, because we love surprises, but we showed them to Adam Silent Hernandez. And he then told us whether or not we had any duplicates, and as it turns out, we do have 1 duplicate, so we will save our duplicate for last. But we will go over the 2 that are not duplicates we each have first. These aren't necessarily us saying they're the best philosophers ever, or it's basically just our 3 favorite philosophers, or 3 that we thought should be showcased on a show such as this. Doesn't mean we won't ever talk about philosophy again, or won't ever mention these people or other people in the future. Do you want to go first, Tiffany, or you want me to take one first?
I want you to go first, because
Okay.
I'm super excited to hear yours.
Okay. My first one that I'm going to go with, just to prove that I'm not a terrible misogynist, is a woman, and it is somebody from modern times, and that is Ayn Rand.
Really?
Yes.
I actually looked at that. I was thinking, I love her as a philosopher.
Yeah.
So it is a good choice.
No, I'm a huge Ayn Rand fan. Elisa Zinovina Rosenbaum is her actual name. Born 1905, died 1982. She's very famous, always very philosophical, always into her own philosophies, always telling a philosophical and ideological message, but she's a fiction author at first. I mean, probably the most famous one's Fountainhead, Atlas Shrugged. She's got many other ones too, but her base of philosophy is objectivism. And within objectivism, she advocates reason as the only true way to gain knowledge, or the only proper way to gain knowledge is maybe how she would say it. She cited people as Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas, and other classical liberals, as her influences. And basically much of what we know A lot of conservatives now like to go back to Ayn Rand, but I don't really think Ms. Rand would have a ton in common with modern day conservatives. But much of the libertarian thought that comes through in today's society are based on her influences. She is basically what we would call libertarian, mixed with a bit of laissez-faire capitalism. Basically meaning not just capitalism in the form we see it, but in true unregulated capitalism. She is very small government minded, yet she has a lot of bad things to say about anarchy, actually. Now, she doesn't want anarchy. She does want a government. She just wants that government to be based on civil rights, human rights, personal rights. And this is where she gets some criticism from people, but she basically says that one's own happiness and morals is basically the noble achievement and the noble goal of the heroic individual. One of the reasons I like Ayn Rand especially is because I feel like there's a lot of critics of her out there. I feel like most of the critics don't make a lot of sense. Rarely is her logic or reason attacked. The biggest attack against her basically is people saying things like she was a jerk.
Really?
Like, she says things that are jerky. She sounds like an asshole. It's like, no, she says things that seem harsh from time to time, but she's speaking the truth. A lot of the other criticisms of her come from things that were part of her philosophy, but that came from her fiction books. And I feel like that's a very unfair criticism, to take what somebody said of her fiction books and not what she wrote in her actual objectivist philosophy books. That to me is like criticizing Tolkien as a man for something that Gandalf or Aragorn did in The Lord of the Rings. They are still fiction books at the end of the day. You can't really criticize them,
Yeah.
But that's all I'll say with Ayn, because I could talk about her for hours, but I do talk too much.
No, so. I definitely like that you chose her. She's very abrasive, I think, sometimes in her thoughts, but I like that. So I think it's a very good choice.
I guess one thing I should say, because I made a note of this for each of my philosophers, if you're interested in Ayn Rand, and her philosophy, there's many books to look at, but the one you might want to look at is The Voice of Reason, which is just her basic philosophy. Also, Reason Magazine, a libertarian publication, is of course named after Ayn Rand's philosophy. So The Voice of Reason, but also her fiction books, like I mentioned, Fountainhead, Atlas Shrugged, and many other ones are great reads as well. So who do you got? Who's your first one on your list, Tiffany?
I'd have to say Rousseau.
Good
I feel like I got that from Radulowski. After he said it, sometimes I read some of his work and I was like, I kind of dig it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think, what is he born in Geneva, I believe? But he was like more of a French philosopher. I think he was born in 1712. So before, obviously, the French Revolution. But by the time the French Revolution happened, he was kind of like a national hero and one of the most noted philosophers of his time. That's what I definitely like about him. I mean, he was a writer and a composer. So that's what I like about him. Any of them that are composers always like wins with my heart a little bit.
This is Enlightenment era, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so this is when you're starting to get your ideas of freedom and liberty, perhaps, but freedom and liberty with a purpose.
Yeah. And what I like about Rousseau is he didn't even like many other philosophers. He really did not like philosophy at all. So, but a lot of his work was dominated a way to preserve human freedom in the world. So, I mean, we live in the land of the free, so we can really appreciate that. So, he said we have to preserve human freedoms in a world where human beings are increasingly dependent on one another for the satisfaction of their needs. Their concern, or his concern, has two dimensions, material and psychological. So, in a modern world, human beings are come to derive their very sense of self from the opinion of others, a fact which he sees as corrosive of freedom and destructive of individual authenticity. Like, that was, every time I've ever read that about him, it's just like, it blows my mind. Because how many people do you know walking around where they, like, their opinions of themselves are dependent on others?
Yeah.
And you're really destroying your own freedoms because you're linking yourself to another person and what they think. So that was like one of the strongest points of why I liked him.
I love this too. I mean, freedom and liberty are my jam.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm totally on board with Rousseau, and I feel like a lot of the best philosophers out there, hint on these ideas of, philosophy is in a lot of ways is opposed to government.
Mm-hmm.
Not by definition, but a lot of it is because, well, the driving philosophy, I guess one could say, about government would be pragmatism, right? You have to do the art of doing what must be done, or to get the job done, or just to, and pragmatism from a philosopher's perspective is kind of lousy.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of pragmatism. I don't like pragmatic things. When I hear somebody describe themselves as a pragmatist, I don't think that's a good thing. And some people do. I mean, a lot of people do, actually. Some presidents, some U.S. presidents are defined as it. Fans of Donald Trump call him pragmatic. And actually fans of Bill Clinton used to say the same. Mm-hmm. He was pragmatic. Like, oh, he's not handcuffed by an ideology or a philosophy. He's pragmatic. He just does what needs to be done in that specific situation. I don't want you to be pragmatic. I want your ideas and your decisions to be based on a well-laid philosophy and ideology. That's just me, though.
Yeah.
My very first philosophy teacher, guy named Dr. Shadden at community college I was going to, actually. Brilliant man. He was actually a former priest. When he started teaching there, he was Father Shadden, and then became Dr. Shadden when he left the priesthood to get married. I hope you wouldn't be bothered by me spreading that information on the airwaves now, but he was a great man, a great dude, and I loved him. And he used to talk about having a t-shirt. He had a t-shirt that said, "Pragmatism doesn't work." And us nerds know that pragmatism is, of course, the art of doing whatever works. So it's kind of this misnomer, and he would just wear it to see what other, professors would get it. He'd say every once in a while, somebody would come and be like, "Oh, that's funny." Except most people wouldn't say anything to him. But I always thought that was a cool t-shirt to have, wear to a, to a nerdy event. Pragmatism doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't think it does either.
No. And Socrates was basically persecuted by pragmatists, if you will. The sophists, right, were pragmatists, as we know from Greek history. And this is what basically put Socrates under the microscope and later in jail.
Yep.
I guess I'm up, right? Or do you got anything else on Rousseau?
I mean, I don't know. I think one of the best things I love about him besides that is that he was he founded Romanticism. So I'm a romantic, but he wanted you to emphasize your feelings, and he stressed the value of nature. So, romantic feelings. I love that,
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
good movement in art, too.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I'm glad you said that, Adam. I'm glad you jumped in at that exact moment, because I was going to mention as well that Ayn Rand's romantic realism was her favorite type of art.
Ayn Rand's a country.
Ayn Rand.
Oh, okay.
No, she was big into romantic realism. That's her favorite art form, and mentioned it in her philosophy from time to time as well. Anything else on Rousseau?
I mean, he just felt like the true state of a man is hidden beneath layers of characteristics. So, I mean, do you believe that's true? I mean, I feel like it is. I mean, as you grow, you get all these characteristics. So it's like the truth of that is under all of that. So when you're born, it's like the truest state that you are. So that they say that the social environment kind of screws you up, essentially. So I feel like that's true. He knew what he was talking about.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. There's a different form of philosophy that kind of goes contradictory to that, but that's kind of what's so fun about philosophy, is that so often you must debate these things, and we'll touch on that in a little bit with one of those things that kind of goes against that. But yeah, I kind of like this idea that that your true self can't really be revealed because it's buried under layers of things that nature and nurture have done to you.
Yep.
You know, over the years. I guess nurture would be I say nature in that instance as in the setting around you, and nurture as in the people that have, I don't know,
Raised you.
Yeah, raised you or
screwed you up.
Yeah,
Who knows?
yeah, exactly. You know, not to say that all parents screw you up, but everybody's got somebody in their life who screwed them up.
Yep, everybody.
Yeah.
You can't get away from it.
Yeah. See, Adam's pointing fingers at me. He likes to not talk, but he just can't help but be in the show. He's pointing fingers at me. I have people in my life. Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So
Shall we
who's
move
up
on?
next?
Okay. My next one. I feel like this one, I couldn't not put this person in, but I feel like it's kind of a cop-out to put this person in because it's such an obvious one, and that person is Aristotle.
I knew it. I wanted to put him in too, but I was like, oh, dude, should I?
Mm-hmm. I know what you mean. It's tough. It's kind of a tough call.
It is.
Lived from 384 to 322 BC. Now, the thing is about Aristotle is you can mention with other people who they were inspired by, but Aristotle wasn't just inspired by somebody. He was actually trained by Plato, who was trained by Socrates. Now, you could easily, and part of me almost thought about this, although this would be a total cop-out and way too cheesy to do on a podcast, but when asked for the best 3 philosophers, you could easily just say those 3. You easily just say Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Boom. Done. List over.
Yeah, but if you look at lists online and stuff like that, barely any of them list them as like their top 5, top 10, anything.
Sure.
So, but it's easy to put them.
Yeah, I mean, it's you can't. It'd be tough to argue with, if somebody were to put that, because basically Plato and Aristotle later are pretty much considered the fathers of what we would call Western philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And with that training, another guy who I think, and I've heard this said by others before, and not somebody that you normally consider a philosopher, but as I just stated, Socrates trained Plato. Plato trained Aristotle, and Aristotle trained Alexander of Macedon, or Alexander the Great. I've actually heard people say in the past, and I don't completely disagree with this, as a huge fan of Alexander the Great, because I am a huge fan of Alexander the Great, and the fact that I have a son named Alexander is not a coincidence when it comes to that. But I've actually heard that of those 4, some people say, well, Alexander the Great is technically the best philosopher of those 4. Because unlike the first 3, he actually brought his philosophy to fruition. He actually made it happen. He actually was the philosopher king, as they like to say in some of their writings. But he is much more known as a warrior and a leader than he is a philosopher. But where did he learn that philosophy? He learned it from Aristotle. And unfortunately, Aristotle has hundreds and hundreds of writings on dozens and dozens of subjects, but a lot of it's lost. This is from a long time ago. And he did his writings on papyrus scrolls that aren't exactly easy to take care of. So anything that's been saved is a big deal. His influences are impossible to even count. He's influenced pretty much every culture on planet Earth. He's influenced Christian theology, not just Christian philosophy, but actual Christian theology and Catholic theology. He actually influenced a lot of Islamic thought. The Muslims, especially Muslims centuries ago, used to refer to Aristotle as the first teacher. What's crazy to me about Aristotle, and I think this is really important to mention when talking about philosophy, but philosophy is a science. A lot of people currently in modern day don't view it as such. They view it as simply a something to think about or something to do. But it was only in the 1900s, basically, that philosophy started being considered separate from what we would now call the hard sciences. And I know, Tiffany, you have background in science as well as history.
Yeah.
And a lot of these things, philosophy and the hard sciences were very much interlinked.
They are.
And if that sounds foreign to people now, it's only within the last 150 years or so that would sound foreign in the least. Because they've always, in the past, within history, have always been completely linked. Aristotle has writings on the aesthetic and the macabre, but he also has writings on hard sciences as well, on physics, on physical science, on emotion, on reason, on logic. It's basically with Plato and Aristotle that this first idea of logic really comes into play, actually. Mm-hmm. He's actually, on an off note, there's a place in Antarctica called the Aristotle Mountains, because way back when, in the 300 BCs, he was actually the first person to ever theorize that there was probably a big, huge landmass frozen in the south. How do you figure that out? How smart do you have to be sitting in Greece with, just your mind in a papyrus scroll and figure out, yeah, there's got to be something down there. Probably a big frozen piece of land down there. And everyone says, yeah, you're crazy. And you say, no, I'm pretty sure. And then hundreds and hundreds of years later, they find out, oh, yeah, look, check it out. Big chunk of ice down here in the south. It's crazy. Aristotle was right. Very, very, that to me is amazing. That to me is truly mind-blowing. If you want to read some Aristotle, the Corpus Aristotelicum, I believe. I always say that wrong. But that is basically the best compilation out there of Aristotle's works. It's typically known as the best they can do when it comes to putting together lost works of the great Aristotle. So that's something to check out. But, hey, just pretty much you can, go to the library and pick up something with Aristotle. You'll find something really, really good. So, what's up, Tiffany? Who do you got for us? Or anything you want to say about Aristotle?
No, I love everything about him. So, it was definitely the foundation of Western philosophy, though. If we didn't have him, we wouldn't have other philosophers, other philosophical ideas. We just wouldn't. I mean, I'm sure we might have something, but it wouldn't be the same. So,
I feel like the idea of philosophy as a subject we study in school is pinned down by people like Aristotle.
It is, because if on any history course, like as we were talking about earlier, one of the first few people you're going to talk about is Aristotle. Mm-hmm. Anything that you read about philosophy, it's synonymous. So with him, him, Plato. So it's all the same.
I'm with you.
So you can't study philosophy without him.
Yeah. So glad that Aristotle gets a resounding totes my goats from the best podcast in history.
And I was like, we'll shake our head. Head, yes.
Yeah.
I dig it.
I can dig Aristotle.
Well, I feel like you're going to be shocked by my next choice.
Oh, really?
I don't know. Maybe. I feel like you might like it.
Okay.
But I chose Buddha.
Oh, good one.
Do you think that's a good one?
I do. Yeah.
I mostly appreciate him because he is related to anything, whether it's Hinduism, Buddhism. I just appreciate that culture. So,
Siddhartha Gautama?
Yeah, I can never say it. I was so happy that you did. But I think, what was he born, like 2,600 years ago, 480 BCE, I want to say. I think he was born even a prince. And it was basically, he just said that you can't have this conditional state of happiness no matter how rich you are. You can't not have suffering. So what can you do to not be suffering? So that's what I love, and he's very analytical, which I'm kind of like that. So that's what I appreciate about that. So that culture is just, I don't know, it's just they appreciate and analyze and say, how can you get here? He doesn't even say that he's a philosopher. He just says, these are things that I've learned, and you can learn them too, through these tools. So it makes it, I mean, why do you think so many people have Buddha statues? Like everywhere? Why do you think there's so many huge statues that people go to worship, throughout? I mean, I think there's like maybe over 10. People actually go, they make that journey.
I had a bunch of little Buddha statues in my place.
Yeah, I actually have so many.
Yeah, I like them.
I just got a nice little new silver one that I put on my my vanity. I was like, oh, this is great.
I like the ones where he's like happy Buddha, where he's still fat Buddha, but he's like happy Buddha and he's like holding stuff up. Those are the ones I like the best.
Yeah, actually,
I like the slothy ones where he's like kind of sitting back too, but I like the happy Buddha ones.
Yeah, I just got one that's just his head. It's nice. Cool. It's awesome, and it's metallic. But I went into Earthlore. I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but they have so many Buddha statues, and I'm just like, can I buy them all? It's just the best thing ever, in my opinion.
My ex-mother-in-law used to buy me Buddha statues, and I just thought they're cool. I like them. Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, there isn't really many writings directly of Buddha that you can get, right?
No, because they were passed down from generation to generation. I mean, this is 2,600 years ago. So, I mean, it's just literally generational. And it's just like the idea of Hinduism. It's just kind of thoughts that have gathered, and it becomes a culture. Mm-hmm. It's not just like, I mean, Hinduism itself, it doesn't even have it's not like there's a founder of it. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, in Buddhism is kind of, I don't want to say it like stems from Hinduism. So
more of a belief structure than a religion.
Yeah.
Perhaps, would that be fair to say?
Yeah. So
and to reach nirvana, right? Is the
the ideal state is nirvana.
Wasn't Christianity thought to have influenced by Buddhism?
I have heard that
to some degree, yeah, and Hinduism as well. I mean, the idea of Shiva, for instance, I mean, has its links to Satan, if you will. Definitely comparisons to be made that I think are more than just coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fair to say. And as we know, Buddha was skinny, right? He was not fat. No. That was the idea, right? And we view him as fat because that's part of their culture. Yeah. Their culture shows that the fat means happy. The fat means success. The fat means that he's there. But really, he was didn't eat and made himself hallucinate in woods by almost starving to death, and
which isn't totally lost on history and other cultures too. The Venus of Willendorf, which I'm sure you guys probably have seen throughout your studies, was one of the first artifacts, one of the first early statues, artifacts, whatever it is you want to call it, ever found. And it's a fertility statue. It is of a woman who is round and I don't want to say fat, but big. And again, it was thought, that shape was thought to have been, a sign of health and fertility and of good, as opposed to, some of the negative stigma that fat may have today.
Do you know what's kind of strange is that, in our Western culture, where we, sometimes we don't think of it this way, but this is not something that's lost even today in the world. Good friend of mine who's from South America, from Peru. While he was here, he lives back in Peru now, but while he was up here in Detroit with me, he used to kind of say that slightly jokingly, but he was being serious, where we would talk about, trying to lose weight or something along those things, and he used to say that, in my country, fat means rich. He used to say that, and this is 6-8 years ago. This is not long at all. But he used to say that all the time. He said, in my country, fat means rich. And that isn't too far derived from this idea that, fat means wealthy, happy, and
But yeah,
full of life.
I mean, there are some like cultures where or even queens. I mean, they were fat. You know, I mean, they had food. You know, peasants are looking for bread and everything because they don't have it, right? And kings and queens have lavish meals. I mean, it's the same idea.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is that all you got for Buddha?
No, I mean, I feel like what I love about the whole idea of his foundation is just that, like, every action has a consequence. You know, being born into your state is because of previous conditions that you might have had. I mean, we can call it karma. We can call it whatever we want. You know, I mean, I believe in that, so maybe that's why I like him so much. But I mean, I think it's so realistic. I mean, maybe. Yeah. I don't know what your idea is on the subject, but I know you're a spiritual man, so
no, for sure.
I'm sure you dig it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm a big Buddha fan, for sure.
I mean, the point is to transcend yourself, right? You know, and to create this ideal state, almost a mindfulness, so you can alter your state of being.
A kind of modern day thing. When I say modern, this was more big 20, 30 years ago, but it's still around for sure. But the idea of transcendental meditation was big in Europe and here in the States for a while. And transcendental meditation kind of comes from these ideas from India and, you know, Hindu and Buddhist ideals, and, you know, and even Confucianism comes from this a little bit too, and Shintoism. Yeah, which is, you know, basically the top religion in Japan, but again, more of a belief structure than a religion. Yeah,
most of them in, like, you know, Eastern Asia, everything like that, it's just a belief structure. So it's something that they've learned over generations. It's their culture. It's not just something that they're attached to, you know. So, but I definitely like it. It's all about freedom and how can you achieve that freedom in that state of nirvana. You know, can you do it on this planet? You know, it's possible. Sure. So it's just given the right tools, and I think that's what they do. It's this: they give you these teachings. You know, he's not trying to be somebody great. He's just trying to find his way in life, and that's what's so great. It's relatable.
Is it safe to say that Kurt Cobain did not find nirvana here on Earth?
I don't think he did.
But perhaps Dave Grohl did, because he went on to start the Foo Fighters and, you know, won a bunch of Grammys and stuff. And sold a bunch of records.
He's more talented anyway.
Yeah, he was more talented. See, now Adam's doing that thing now where he's saying, now he's being that producer in the background that is saying he's not going to talk so he doesn't mic himself up. But then he's just in the background like that thing, like he thinks he's on Howard Stern now or something.
You know what? You bait me with this shit, man. You do.
I love that you bait him.
I need to get the different type of mic though, where it's like it sounds more like a megaphone.
Yeah. You do need one of those. Yeah, talk to the owners here. Let's get you some more stuff. Yeah, Adam is the owner. He's the one that buys all the stuff. That's the thing. See, Adam loves to make fun of me for loving the sound of my own voice, because who doesn't love the sound of my voice? But he loves to make fun of me for that, but Adam can't help himself from talking either. He's got to get on that mic. That's why he hosts like 17 podcasts. He's all over the place. He's the heart and soul of everything right here on theempiremedia.com. That's why we love him. He's a great man, great leader, great producer.
Couldn't do without him.
A great co-host too, although he doesn't want to be a co-host today.
All right, so who's next up on our list?
Next up on our list, spoiler alert, Tiffany and I both know who we're going to say because we did have Adam look, and this was our duplicate. And that is a man who lived from 1632 to 1704, John Locke. I was surprised that this was the one we had duplicate, actually.
Really?
Yeah,
I thought we would have some, like, I thought we were going to have, like, Buddha or Confucius, like, because I almost chose him, like, something along those lines.
Cool.
Because I know you love that samurai shit.
Yeah,
you know, so I definitely thought we would meet over in that realm.
Love that samurai shit. That is so true. I do love that samurai shit.
I was like, how could we not meet over there? But apparently, we're meeting in Europe now.
Yeah. But hey, you know, and Tiffany and I do both have a background in American history as well. And John Locke, definitely not an American, born or dead before America exists. But John Locke is a huge part of the Enlightenment. Yeah. And he is a huge influence on the founding fathers of the United States, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I was considering. And if this was a list of 5, maybe I would have. If it was a list of 10, I definitely would have. But I was considering whether or not to put a founding father on my list. To put Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, because you so could.
Yeah, you absolutely could. I mean, Thomas Jefferson, a great philosopher in his own right. But, and perhaps this is wrong, I don't necessarily think of the founding fathers so much as philosophers, because I think of them more as doers. Yeah. They didn't just talk about it. They actually started a revolution and founded a nation. Based on philosophy, though. Mm-hmm. And, I feel like a lot of times we as Americans kind of look at like, hey, we're the land of the free. And England is still this country that, although our system isn't too totally different nowadays, they are this country that still retained their monarchy. But, we like to say that we're citizens and they're subjects. What's the difference between that and 2018? I don't know that there is a huge difference, but it's there. But many of these ideas of liberty, freedom, breaking away from government, these were born from British people. These came from England. They came from Britain. They came from these people who were living under the monarchy of England. Mm-hmm. And they were adopted by, well, let's face it, the founding fathers were British too, to some degree. They were European, anyway.
They all come from different places, but all from Europe.
Right. A question that sometimes throws people for a loop, a goofy trivia question, is when you say, who was the first president born in the United States? And a lot of times people who aren't up on the subject kind of look at you funny. Like, what do you mean? Aren't they all born in the United States? Well, of course not. Well, was George Washington president when he was 6 years old? Like, no, I mean, the first president can't be born there. So, I mean, the answer is Martin Van Buren. So the first 7 presidents are born in what is technically not the United States of America. That's a big deal to some degree. You got to think about it. This was brand new then. And where did these ideas come from? They came from guys like John Locke, who were part of the Enlightenment, inspired by, as Tiffany mentioned, Rousseau was a big inspiration for John Locke. And then John Locke went on to inspire what Jefferson said in the Declaration of Independence. Yeah. Do you want me to throw it to you for a minute? Anything to say about Locke?
I mean, I just like that his early years. I mean, this is what always attracts him, because I obviously have a undergrad degree in medicine and biology and stuff like that. So I love that his early career was actually, he was going to be a doctor. So it wasn't until he actually got pulled into, the social classes of Europe and Britain or at the time, England, that he really changed that course of history for him.
Yeah.
So that was a really important part, but that also made him an analytical thinker. So, and I think that helped. So he had a little bit of analyticalness to him, plus some concrete side that he, gathered along the way.
So John Locke's all like you.
He is kind of like,
I mean,
that's kind of
he starts out, learning about biology and going that route, the hard medical sciences, then switches over to liberal arts, and then decides to, no, I'm just going to be a philosopher now.
Yep.
I mean, he didn't have a podcast, but...
no, if he could, I'm sure he would.
But he would have, though.
He would have.
I think all these philosophers would have had podcasts. But then again, nowadays, everybody and their brother's got a podcast anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, shit, Adam's mom's got a podcast. I mean, everybody's got a podcast. It's cool. Podcast rule. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Don't act... You people, don't act like you don't think podcast rule. You're listening, aren't you? Podcast rule. Everybody knows it. Get on board.
Yeah.
Stop hating. Start participating. Thing is, now you mentioned with Rousseau the idea that our hidden self is buried under what we've been taught and what our culture has shown us, and basically that one has to break through the crust and the ugliness of what the world has thrust upon you to get to your inner self. But John Locke, though very much influenced by Rousseau and very much in agreement with Rousseau in certain things, didn't think that, because his big thing is theory of the mind, right?
Yep.
That he believes that when you are born, you are a blank slate. Correct. Yes, love it. Love it. Yeah, the blank slate theory that you are consciousness born with nothing.
See, that's the one thing I do love John Locke, but I think that's the one thing I disagree with him.
I think I'm more of a Rousseau leaner as well on that particular thing. But from this, that he gets part of the ideology of science, like to call it.
And what he definitely brought, I mean, we even learned this throughout our master's program, is he brought continuity and cause and effect. Yes. I think those are huge things and concepts that he brought to us, that we still learn today, that are huge things that we implement. How do we say that word? Epistemology. Yeah. It always kills me. Every time Bozic would say it, it's like he said it so eloquently, but I can never say it.
Epistemology. Teology was the one that always got me. I can never pronounce that one right.
Teleology?
Yeah, I always want to call it teology or something. I think it's teology.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, we could do a whole show on epistemology and theology. We probably will do a whole show on those things. We definitely should. But yeah, I don't think we got time to bust into that too much tonight. But and if you want to read something by Locke, you definitely want to check out Two Treatises of Government. Mm-hmm. Two Treatises of Government.
Yeah, Two Treatises. Yep.
You definitely want to look into that for sure. Tons of writing by Locke too that you can, but that's. If you're gonna read one thing by John Locke, you want to read that for sure. I would say. We talked about the blank slate with Locke, but I believe was it Rousseau that kind of gave the idea, or people around the time of Rousseau kind of gave the opposite philosophical idea of Locke, where they said basically you're born with all the knowledge.
Yeah, because he repudiated that. He said because they always say that you were born with like truth, math, logic, and stuff, and that's something that he didn't believe.
You had to unlock it within your own brain.
Yeah,
you had to relearn it as you
it was somewhere in there, but you just had to as you say, unlock it. But,
right,
but that's not the only thing that he did. I mean, what I do love about him is that he loved religious freedom.
Mm-hmm. He did.
That is huge for him. So, I mean, that was around the time of Henry VIII, or was it before or after? I think it was, it was actually after Henry VIII, or around that time. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, Henry VIII founded the Church of England, and he felt that you shouldn't be persecuted for, religious freedoms. I mean, for years we had these wars, based on religion, which is so ridiculous, right? I mean, Everybody should be able to practice that. So, years later, I mean, I think really England was one of the first countries to accept, religious tolerance.
That is true. That is true. And I think what Locke did a lot of the times, too, because he was a religious man, he wasn't being anti-religion when he was criticizing religious wars. I think what he's more doing is criticizing government and saying that you're using people's religion as an excuse to go to war.
Yeah.
It is basically what's going on.
Because he said, forcing religious uniformity only causes social chaos. And he saw that. So, I mean, obviously, if you want to keep forcing that uniformity, do you want chaos?
Sure.
So I mean, he always, that's why he actually loved, we have the land of the free, and stuff like that. I think it's all just this, continuation of that initial step.
And when you talk about Locke too, I think it's good. A lot of times in college courses, they love to talk about Locke and Hobbes together.
They do.
Very, very different philosophers, but they're kind of. I can see why college courses have historically done this, because it is kind of interesting to look at those two together, because very different, but in their differences almost make similar points from time to time.
Yep.
With Locke and Thomas Hobbes for sure. One thing I love about Locke, we're kind of coming to a close here on the show, on our first episode of the best podcast in history. The one thing I really love about Locke too is he's not the only philosopher to do this, but I loved that he was very plain and very open about the idea that he was studying this as a science, and that anytime he found one of his writings or one of his ideas to be inaccurate, that he wanted to be the first one to say, to throw that away. Mm. That, he wasn't above finding that something he had said in the past was not true, or not scientifically found, or scientifically sound, maybe is a better way to put it, and that he would want to be the first one to throw that away and start anew.
I mean, that's how you know you're awesome. Yeah. If you can have that evolution within your work. Because some people are just, they just will, deny it or not accept it, But he actually flows with that evolution.
Very true.
So.
Very true. Tiffany, any last thoughts as the show comes to a close?
No, I think that was pretty awesome.
Yeah,
I think we did a good job.
Nailed it.
Did we?
Yeah, maybe.
Did we just make history?
I think we made history. What's so great about history is whether the show was good or the show was crap, we still made history.
We did.
We did. We made history tonight. I am Josh Houslander.
I am Tiffany Foresi.
And he is Adam Hernandez, still without a microphone in his face. So we will see you again. We'll make sure to be out there on social media and let you know when our next episode will be. And then maybe we'll get a more of a clear-cut schedule going after that. And we're going to have some more direct topics, even more direct than we had tonight, later on. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We appreciate it.